I'm wondering if you never told Cliff, if you never, not never told Cliff, if you never um, told Cove about the $20. I'm guessing that maybe at some point, even if you didn't say anything, it would have revealed itself anyway. But if Cove had never known by the time he got married, I think it would have been awesome for his dad to like reveal that here. His dad to reveal that here at their wedding. That I don't know. I feel like that would have been really really hilarious. Maybe it's not the word. Maybe that's not the word. Um, what I'm saying is that all my worries and regrets were at their peak. I was acting crazy. I know it now. But somehow it still turned out that there really wasn't anyone else for him, or not anyone better for him anyway. Nobody else in the world who can be there for Cove the way he can. It's. I. The sentence remained unfinished as much as he tried. Cliff couldn't put the words together to express what it meant to him. Cliff placed a hand against his chest as his gaze lowered to the ground. His delicate words continued to be shared with a full gathering of people thanks to the mic, but it was as if Cliff was speaking only to his son. That day, such a long time ago at this point, when you found out about why me and Kyra divorced, he was there. Hark was there when the plan was just to go jet skiing. Then, when that emotional bomb happened, he was still there. And when you felt ready to head back out to keep going forward, you just had to turn your head to see someone who was ready to go with you.
I'm so
Not
glad.
into the water. I love you, Cove. I don't love you that much. I love you, though. But not that much. You had someone who supported in ways I never would. It was just what I had hoped for. I was so relieved. He glanced forward once more, offering a smile directly to you. You're an amazing person, Hark. Inhaling deeply through his nose, Cliff's stance pulled together, tall and solid. His dark blue eyes shone with a depth to them as they met with the far brighter blue of his child's eyes. Son, being your dad will always be the best thing I've done in my entire life, and getting that condo on that street was the luckiest card I ever drew. I bet you two would have found each other with or without that eventually. But because, I don't know, because I probably would have found Derek. I probably would have found Derek. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But it's true. I still love you, Cove. But because of it, my kid got to grow up right next to the person who could make him happiest. I can't ask for more than that. And Hark, you didn't need a dad with what great moms you've got, but I'm so thankful I still get to be yours. I love you both, and I'll keep loving you for the rest of the time I've got. Tears streaked down Cove's face freely. He didn't fight their falling. I love you too. Watching you and your husband from where he stood, Cliff got misty-eyed himself. He reached to wipe his cheeks, completely forgetting there was a microphone in his hand. Cliff set it down, shyly waved over to the two of you, and stepped away. He was then able to rub at the ever-growing tears. No one spoke or even moved as Cliff returned to his spot. When he was seated, Kyra reached over to give his back a pat. He had done good. He had done well. Sorry, that really bothers me a lot. He had done well. Then the mic sat there, untouched. None of the attendees wanted to pick up after where it had been left off. That was going to be the final speech from your guests. You were certain. Nice. That was a really awesome set of speeches. I'm glad we made it an open mic so that anyone who wanted to speak could say something. That was cool. Cove's breath was shaky, taking in everything. A weepy smile reappeared on his face the more it sunk in just how much he was cared for. He leaned against your side, pulling at the tablecloth and burrowing his face into your shoulder. You chuckled, feeling good. You shook your head amusedly. You were blushing wildly. You had a wry smile on your face after that. Your eyes were glossy. I'm gonna say you chuckled, feeling good. And you sat there completely still, and you gave Cove's cheek an encouraging pat. And you tucked your face into Cove's hair, and you brushed Cove's hair back soothingly. And you gave Cove's cheek an encouraging pat. Affectionately, you rubbed your palms against his damp skin in the hopes of giving some comfort. He was too sweet. When a voice was amplified it out across the whole space once more, it was expectedly your planner, giving his appreciation for the cooperation again and announcing the closing of the speeches. But rather than leaving the microphone on the counter, he strolled up to your table with a device in hand. Is he about to give a speech too? Before we shut this off for the night, would either of you like to give your own message to your loved ones? Oh! Cove lifted his teary face up to acknowledge Baxter, pausing to sniffle. I'll do it. I'd like to say something too. Yes, please. I think it'll be fine with Cove just speaking. You shook your head. No, I like to talk too. I'd like to say something too.
Of course.
Of course. Here you are. Cove used one hand to scrub his eyes and the other to accept the mic, drawing it in close. Too close. His murmur cracked uncomfortably loud, and Cove's arms sprung out straight instinctively to get the noisemaker away from him. He winced before much more cautiously lifting the mic towards his face. He cradled it in both hands, and his gaze dropped to the ground. Thanks, everybody. Really, seriously, His eyes closed completely as he paused to bite his lips. So glad to be here, and all those things you said were... There was a cracking strain to Cove's voice that wasn't caused by technical error. He was choking up. Each word had to be pushed out with dedicated effort. Really nice. I love you. As rapidly stuttered as it was, what he meant to express came through to you and the rest of the people there to hear it. Cove's earnest affection. In a fumbling motion that screeched out even more unintentional feedback, Cove passed the mic to you. His now free hands moved to cover his mouth. As you rose up from your chair, your eyes casting out over each individual in the crowd, you had to accept the bittersweet notion that this truly was a special occasion. You had no idea when everyone you cared for would be gathered together in the same place again. Yeah, that's true. Or when you'd see some of them next. Or even see some of them next. Thy name is Shiloh. You wondered if Cove had been cognizant of the... Is that how you spell cognizant? I don't know if that's how you spell it. Unless if it's a different spelling. Unless it has multiple spellings. Of the same... I'm pretty sure it's spelled with a Z. I could be wrong. Of the same thing while he was speaking. That this message had weight to it. That this was your last big chance to share your thoughts with him. All you could think to say was, thank you for coming. It wouldn't be the same without you. We both love you so, so much. I'll always be grateful to have each of you in my life. All right, those were good. You passed the test, you joke. You're all too nice. I love you. Your speeches are beautiful. Thank you. I'll always be grateful to have each of you in my life. And that brought the speeches to their last sentimental note. That's all I said? Oh, man. I definitely would have said way more than that. Your eyes remained focused ahead as you extended your hand out for Baxter to take the microphone and lowered back down in your seat. Applause erupted from table to table, and Baxter grinned approvingly. Perfect. He took the microphone back with him as he rejoined with the other staff members in order to give you and Cove some space to yourselves. When the clapping subsided, emotions remained high. Further conversations were tentative and hushed for a time. But eventually, the happy chatter that frequented your reception filled the air again. It was an evening of good food and good company. When the meal was nearing its end, the final course you had requested from the caterer was handed out, the palate cleanser. From there, the evening continued to slip by in a dreamy haze. Before you knew it, all the attendees had finished and the dishes from the dinner had been swiftly cleared from the tables. In spite of this, everyone remained rooted in their seats. It was no secret that there was more to come. People were waiting eagerly for dessert, though none of them could match the vibrating anticipation of your husband. It was time for the cake! But before the big event, you had something else up your sleeve. The servers returned to bestow the extra treats to your guests. Truly delightful trays of fancily plated crepes were delivered to the tables and distributed to the guests. The dishes had been carefully selected to match your orange color scheme. It was impossible to tell who out of Terry and Miranda was more elated about this choice. Oh yeah, I'm glad I figured they'd appreciate the crepes. As soon as they'd realized what was coming their way, they looked at each other with glee. The servers vanished from the floor with impressive efficiency, allowing the wedding cake to take center stage. Sat on a center table was your fully realized creation, a 5-tiered, unusual style, gold masterpiece. You were pleased to see that your guests were as smitten with it as you and Cove were. Cliff let out a low whistle of admiration. What a cake! Terry gasped. Are you really gonna cut it? That cake must have taken an eternity to put together. Lee was utterly enchanted.
Very nice.
Yes, I love it. It's so cool that you went with gold instead of just white. Totally unpredictable. I mean, I'm pretty much a man who tries to go against the grain all the time. Baxter beckoned for you and Cove to come forward. You rose from your seats as one and crossed the floor to the display table, where a waiting server offered a cutting knife to you both. The two of you took hold of the handle, hand over hand, so that you could make the incision as a team. Together, you hovered the knife over the lowest layer of the cake. You glanced at Cove, who smiled wryly at you. It really was almost too beautiful to cut. But just almost, and your guests were waiting for their portions of the delicious cake. Carefully, so as to preserve the structure as much as possible for as long as you could, you pushed down with the knife. It slid through the cake easily, leaving a smooth cut all the way through. You and Cove drew the knife out, then made another cut in order to create a neat triangle of cake. The server produced a plate ready for the first slice. I wish you could see a picture of the cake. With a bit of shakiness in the motions between the two of you, you slipped the knife under the piece and transferred it to the waiting plate. The first slice was done. You nodded satisfied before reaching down to plunge your hand straight into the cake. The soft, spongy treat squished beneath your fingers. Cove's fingers brushed against yours as he scooped the remaining cake from the platter into his own hand. You pressed your whole hand into his face. You flung the cake at him. You rubbed the cake across both his cheeks. You frosted the tip of his nose with your fingertips. I'm pressing my whole hand to his face. Scooping up a chunk of cake, you smashed your palm right into Cove, smearing the confection across his nose, cheeks, and chin. Even his wavy eyebrows got caught in the action with crumbs and smudges of frosting clinging to their hairs. Then, with fingers dripping with creamy confections and crumbs, he delicately caressed your cheek, leaving a trail of cake behind. The frosting was cool against your skin, while the fine crumbs of cake itself tickled as he streaked them across your cheeks. You tried to contain your giggles until he was done, not wanting to move at the wrong time and get cake in your eye. A few rogue chuckles still escaped. When Cove's furrowed brow relaxed to his normal expression and he brought his hand away, you finally judged it was safe. You exploded with laughter at his novel approach to cake smashing. It was just like him. The two of you were then both caked in cake. A towel was laid out on a nearby serving platter, almost certainly for the purpose of helping people clean up after this exact scenario had played out. Cove wiped himself off with it as you laughed. I think in our wedding in real life, my wedding with Colin in real life, I think we actually were more reserved. I feel like at the last minute we decided, no, we're not going to smash in each other's faces, which is why I want to live vicariously through the virtual me and Cove. When Cove removed the towel from his face, he revealed a tickled smile. He'd taken the smashing with humor and grace, like an absolute champ, and he held out the towel to you. It was good that Cove was there to assist. You'd been so engrossed in watching him that you'd completely forgotten the cake still clinging to your face and fingers. You both happily made your way back over to the head table, accompanied by the cheers of your family and friends. Though you'd spent a lot of time on your feet today, each step was buoyant. When you and Cove were back in your seats, a couple of waiters smoothly placed freshly cut slices of cake before you. Cove let out a thrilled squeak as he picked up the provided fork. Each aspect of it had been painstakingly planned to suit the occasion as well as your tastes. Now, at last, it was finally there for the eating. You were just as eager to eat it. You weren't going to hold back. You were looking forward to having a slice. You would have a taste, but you were mostly happy for Cove. You were happy for Cove, though weren't going to eat the cake yourself. Heck no! How much we paid for this thing? I'm eating it! And I'm not holding back with everything I paid for this thing. And in short order, servings of cake were set down at each table, a neat triangular slice in front of every guest. As the crowd dug in, along came discussion of the dessert. It tastes just as nice as it looks. Given how starry-eyed Miranda had looked when the cake was first revealed, this was a weighty compliment indeed. I never would have thought of having a flavor profile like this, but it's great.
Nice work.
Good work coming up with it, Sport and Hark. Kyra agreed at once. You outdid yourselves. Cove stopped shoveling fondant into his mouth long enough to give his own praises. Our cake is definitely something hard to find literally anywhere else. That's how it should be. For my wedding cake, that's how it should be. It's special, and I can always associate this taste with just our wedding. It's even better because the cake itself is just so good. It's actually amazing. I mean, I am the foodie after all. You were hooked within one bite. It was just as wonderful as you'd hoped, and more. The bakery had outdone themselves. You and Cove wolfed down the delicious cake with gusto, polishing off your slices easily. You couldn't believe how quickly it was gone. Your plate scraped clean, but it had been much too good to resist. Luckily, there was no shortage of cake. Both you and Cove flagged down a waiter for more. By the time the meal was officially over, Cove had not only devoured 3 full-sized slices of cake, but he double-checked with Baxter about what would happen to any leftovers. I'm pretty sure we would get it. Baxter needed to reassure him that any remaining sections of the cake would be wrapped up to go home with the two of you. It was pleasant to sit back and relax for a while, giving your feet time to recuperate from a long day, but the lull did not last for long. Newly fueled by cake, the party was beginning to start again. The celebration was able to continue in earnest. Derek, Lee, Terry, and Miranda got the dance floor going. They took turns pulling silly moves and cheering each other on. Liz sung along to all the songs she knew whenever an old favorite from your life growing up together came on. She chose to keep Shiloh company throughout the party. She never lost the fondness she had for the guy. From the glimpses you caught, he didn't seem to have minded. Oh, that's cute. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Your four parents made their table base camp and cycled between while catching up with other family in town and enjoying with one another. They spent much of the time trading sentimental stories about when their babies were just babies. Cove's one uncle showed off his classic magic tricks. To celebrate the day, your husband was far more enthusiastic about the stunts as a 23-year-old adult than he was as an 8-year-old child. During the entire time, more casual photos were snapped of the best and funniest moments. One was when Miranda got Terry to hold up her dress so she could do a handstand. You couldn't wait to see them fully developed. And many guests had been generous enough to bring presents that you and Cove might need. You'd finish opening each one and offering your thanks. Seafoam green towels, dishes, a water purifier, a framed picture of the sea with the words, "Life's a beach," cute, were just some of your takeaways for the day. The most common gift, however, was the safe bet of simply giving cash. Great, because we're gonna probably go through surrogacy to have a child. You'd never seen so many $20 bills in one place. Your families had a sense of humor. That's cool. Thank the maker. We got so many $20 bills. Of course, the relationship that began with someone offering money would reach its head with that repeating. Your husband caught a glimpse of the silent amusement in your face. His mouth curved into a smirk as he watched you. You'd bet money that he knew exactly what was on your mind. Good evening. The distinct voice of your planner caught your attention. He approached with a polite wave.
No.
The people, are as welcome as you are. They've treated the staff, including myself, well throughout the reception. Well, with one exception. Mr. Shiloh is something of a character, but don't worry. We can handle a bit of snark just fine. Yeah, I actually would love to see Baxter, with Shiloh. I feel like Baxter, of all people, Baxter could put Shiloh in his place. I don't know. I feel like he could handle him. I'd ship them. The description made Cove wheeze. He couldn't meet Baxter's gaze when replying. Sorry, he's got kind of an attitude. I've noticed. As pleasant as he kept the pleasantries, Baxter was certain to get to the point of the conversation quickly. Well, I'm here to say that you've got the space for a few more hours, but there are no more planned events or responsibilities on your shoulders. The day went off exactly as intended. He pressed his hand against the bottom of his spine and leaded his torso back against them to stretch? Wouldn't be and led his torso back against them to stretch? For a single side word, Baxter let himself clock out of the work mindset. Hallelujah. But the metaphorical bell rang and he returned promptly to providing his service, standing up perfectly straight and pointing his toes forward. You're free to simply enjoy yourselves, however you want with the time that's left. Of course, I'll personally put out any fires if they do appear. You two don't need to worry about anything. Cool. Thank you for all of this. You really were the perfect guy to do it. Baxter's brows curved, his eyes softened, and even pausing to steady himself, he didn't hide the emotion rich in his voice. That means a lot to me. Cove is right. You did fantastic. I knew you'd pull it off. You nodded along with Cove's words. Thank you for all your help. You're getting a 5-star review from us. It was so wonderful putting this together with you. I knew you'd pull it off. The smile already prominent on his face warmed further. Baxter ran his hand down his shirt, smoothing it out into a casual, fluid motion.
You're welcome.
You're very welcome. It's been a joy working with you two, truly. His mood was light all around until the feeling really hit Cove. He shifted in place uncomfortably, not knowing how to proceed from that point when that was reached. So, does that mean we're friends? Oh. He blinked rapidly as his mouth closed into a tight line before saying a full thought. Baxter always needed a second to recover on the rare occasion that something knocked him off his game. In a flash of memories, you were transported to your childhood bedroom, 8 years old, your first sleepover with your now husband. In the tiny, dainty voice he used to have, Cove had asked nearly the same question to you then, if you were friends. Sweet and unsure, he'd always been the man you loved and always would be. Well, until the Derek DLC. Until the Derek DLC. Well, that's your call, I'd say. Despite the prompting to talk, Cove couldn't put together an answer. We're definitely friends. I'd like to be friends. I think we're friends. We've always been friends since way back when. It's so funny you both still can barely talk to each other. We're friends. You gave Cove a confirming nod. It's so funny you both still can barely talk to each other. We're friends. Two pairs of eyes from two very different men set on you, though eventually moving to look at one another. Smiles returned to both of their features. As Baxter would say it was settled. To solidify the relationship, opened his arms out to you for a hug. You gladly reciprocated. You shyly dipped your head, keeping your hands down. No, I'll reciprocate it. This man gave us the dream wedding, the perfect dream wedding that we wanted. Why would I deny him a hug? That's idiotic. You tucked your arms around his chest in a nice, affectionate embrace. He wrapped his arms across your back in return before letting you go again. Next, his hand went towards Cove. He held it out evenly with confidence, not from a want to be self-assured, but he was actually certain that they had a closer relationship now. Cove looked down at it considering, but he ultimately raised his hands, his arms and shoulders in a motion that was both an awkward shrug and an invitation to hug instead. The lopsided grin he gave was contagious, and Baxter took hold of Cove while positively beaming. Baxter was only tall enough to bring his chin to Cove's shoulder, but he rested it there comfortably. Cove chuckled in bemusement. It took a long time, but he had been won over to Baxter's side. He gave his new friends a pat on the back before they ended the embrace amicably. I hope you enjoy your post-wedding bliss as long as you can, but when life settles back down to normal, we should have dinner. I know some good places. I bet he would know some good places. I bet. That'd be nice. I guess we'd call you? Definitely. We'd love to get together again. Perfect. And congratulations on your lovely day. Which reminds me, we haven't had a chance to hang out with our wedding planner recently. I feel like I should contact her, because she did a smashing good job. He then quite literally bowed out, tipping one foot back and inkling forward. He kept his head lifted up with that curled grin you'd become so used to, featured prominently on his face. Baxter left the two of you there, disappearing into the crowd of figures, all in black, to help keep the event running as smoothly as possible. You thought back to the very start of that special day when Baxter promised he'd congratulate you when it was over. That gave his parting words an extra sense of finality. But it wouldn't be a real goodbye. This time, Baxter would be a part of your lives for as long as he was welcome in it. You believed him in that. With the staff busy and the guests mingling with each other, you and Cove had a moment completely to yourselves since the wedding first began that morning. You knew for certain that you could relax when you caught Cove pulling into a big stretch. His torso twisted to one side and his hands rose up as high as he could get them. He had to fight a bit against the crisp, fitted shirt he was unbuttoned into, but Cove was persistent. His eyes had been closed when he worked out the last of the jitters he'd carried throughout the day, but his gaze landed on you as soon as he finished. There was a radiant warmth in his expression as he spoke to you with an eased heart. If you don't mind, I want to dance with you again before it's over. Heck yeah! I would have not given you a choice. I would love to. I've been waiting for you to ask. I was about to ask the same thing. Of course, Cove, not gently. Could we find a quiet place to sit instead? I've been waiting for you to ask. He smiled openly and welcomely. It was more inviting than his direct words had been. As he had in the past, and as you were certain he'd do in the future, Cove lifted his hand for you to take. You accepted then as you always would. You accepted them. Oh, you accepted then as you always would. You and your husband slipped away from the main seating area out to the center of the space. But by that late hour, the dance floor had mostly emptied. Really? Your fingers remained linked as you both took hold of the other with your second hands, taking form for a dance. Cove brought his chest near enough to brush against you and nuzzled his cheek against yours. Slowly, calming music drifted through the air. It enveloped you and kept out the buzz of distant conversation still happening. You began to sway to the sound, cozy and content. It felt as though you and he were in your own world.
So...
Well, Mr. Holden Angel, congratulations on your successful wedding. Congratulations you too, Mr. Holden Angel. Yes, it was highly successful. Thank you. Your heart pounded a little harder.
Thanks.
Congratulations to you too, Mr. Holden Angel. Thanks. And if you're wondering, my plan is to be the last person who gets to congratulate you tonight. He waggled his wiggly eyebrows, being intentionally silly. I'm rooting for you. You're such a goofball, he said affectionately. In that case, I'll cover my ears if anyone tries to congratulate me again. You giggled. He was adorable. Be the last person to get to congratulate you tonight. I'll say... I'm rooting for you. Wow, it's so nice to have a supportive partner. He sighed softly and his shoulder lowered comfortably, but Cove suddenly perked back to attention and something struck him. Though I could just say it again when we get to the hotel room, I'd definitely be the last person to do it then. That's one of the perks of being married. I pretty much always get to be the first and the final with you. You for me too. I'm good with that. There's no one else I'd want to be my first and last for everything. Me too. I guess I can manage it, you teased. You beamed agreeingly. I don't know, I could always call someone, you joked. I think that's wonderful. I'll say, I guess I can manage it, you teased. Good. In his glistening eyes, you could see how treasured you really were. Cove whispered heartfelt words.
See you tomorrow.
Oh, I also get to say this for sure. See you tomorrow, Hark. I'll see you tomorrow, too. Cove pressed himself into even more snugly and letting out a tiny thrilled squeak. Cove, is there anything you're hoping for in our lives after this? Now that we have a minute, I wanted to mention how you looked. Cove seemed like he had something on his mind. You gave him an encouraging smile. You let yourself quietly enjoy his company. I'm curious, because I want to talk about kids. Maybe not during the wedding day, but at some point. Cove, is there anything you're hoping for in our lives after this? Oh. Nerves creeped back over Cove's features, but he took in a breath and answered you honestly. Well, do you still want kids? Heck, yeah, let's take these $20 bills and start cracking. You felt a pounding in your ears and your breathing became more rapid. You and Cove had been on the same page about that, but the idea that he was ready to put into emotion had an impact. I do. Yes, that would make me so happy. I'm not sure I want to anymore. I will say that would make me so happy. That would make me so happy. I want to use a surrogate and to adopt children. I'm gonna say I want to use a surrogate and to adopt children. For a second, he completely stalled. You winced. I mean, not at the same time. Not at the same time. Because we have 2 children through surrogacy, and for right now, 2 children are enough of a handful. But I'm keeping the door open. If it were up to me, because I haven't really thoroughly discussed this with my husband. If it were up to me, I would love to adopt a 3rd child. Because there are so many children out there who could use a good home. And a lot of children, I would specifically adopt an older child, the children that have a much harder time to get adopted. Because most people want to, adopt children as young as possible, which makes total sense because it gives them the ability to bond longer with the child, gives them the ability to experience, if they've never had kids before, it gives them a chance to experience as much of what it would be like if they had birthed the child themselves by going as long as possible, etc., etc. But I know there's so many kids that are older that could definitely use good homes, that have a hard time finding homes. So, I would not want necessarily to adopt an infant, for example, because I do not want to sleep train, potty train, food train. Well, maybe food training is fine because I might be able to help them be a foodie themselves and not to be be a little adventurous. But anyway, I would prefer adopting a child at around the same age as my kids would be at that point. We'll see. I'm not sure. For all I know, 2 is really all we can handle without putting in a 3rd, but I'm just kind of leaving it there as a possibility. For a second, he completely stalled. You winced as him potentially fainting became a real possibility once more. Instead of falling, he spoke. Okay. Okay? I mean, don't let me twist your arm. Had I known that you would have been this lackluster, then we probably should have discussed this more before we got married, because that's a big deal. The word was so quiet. I needed to hear him so much. You instinctually pulled closer to him. You regretted that choice immediately after, because he reaffirmed himself in a shout.
Right?
We can get babies. Not right now, I mean, unless you want to do it right now. Yeah, right here, right now on this dance floor, right in front of everybody. Cove was panicking, bouncing up and down his feet enough to shake both of your bodies. You knew his heart was in the right place, though. It filled you with joy. Don't worry, we'll take our time. Nowadays, we don't have much of a choice. Surrogacy and adoption takes a long time, let me tell you. Even if we wanted it now, not gonna happen. He panted out uneven breaths, but calmed enough to stall himself.
Yeah.
Good idea. Thanks, Hark. Thank you, too. Now that I have a minute, I wanted to mention how you looked. His stance tensed, blushing in his finery. The spotlight had turned back on, and Cove was getting stage fright. Do you like it? Yes, you look incredible. I love it. It's flawless. Perfection. Unbelievable glamorous. I was tearing up over how gorgeous it is. You nodded surely. I said, I was tearing up over how gorgeous it is. I'm gonna say, yes, you look incredible. The cut suited him, and you loved how the colors worked for his complexion.
I'm so glad.
That's great. I'm really glad you think so. You could tell from his blush that he had ultimately enjoyed your attention. His posture relaxed, and he seemed more confident in the clothes again. I like yours too, wish I could see it. I bet early today people thought you were doing some kind of photo shoot instead of really having a wedding. Thank you. Cove seemed like he had something on his mind. You gave an encouraging smile. He chewed on the inside of his cheek as the silence grew longer. You remained patient, communicating your willingness to listening through your eager eyes. Hark, there's something I want to say. The sentence faded out, his lips clammed up in a trembling line. He had to force it back open. I wanted to say without crying, but your vows were so nice to hear, and I love them, and thank you for doing that. Simply remembering the scene had gotten the tears flowing again. He couldn't help it. And yours was so sweet and thorough. Very thorough. I've got to say it. I can't say it if you want me to. It's a nice word spell. Thanks, you, for yours too. He sniffled once, then twice, and then he grinned back at you. You let yourself quietly enjoy his company. You kissed his lips. You gave every part of his face a kiss. You cuddled your cheeks together again. You moved his hands to embrace him. You bowed blissfully. You gave every part of his face a kiss. The first kiss or two were accepted with sweet giggles from Joe Cove. The more you peppered against the skin, the shakier his chuckles became. Before you felt finished, he brought a hand over to your shoulder to nudge you down. You squinted your eyes back open, disappointed. Cove's brows crinkled apologetically. He let his face come near to yours once more. It wasn't touching, but he could whisper words only for you.
It's okay.
Sorry, we gotta wait for that. But I promise, later, soon. A bolt of anticipation shivered through your body. Cove could forever make your future something to look forward to. But then you heard your husband sigh wistfully. It all went by so fast. And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't only mean the wedding, it's everything. Where did the years go? When did you and me become grown up? I have no idea. I don't feel grown up. Legally, it was when we turned 18 years of age. I think it happened a long time ago. We just didn't notice. You the crybaby grown up? I'm not sure about that one. You didn't have an answer. I think it happened a long time ago. We just didn't notice. Maybe you're right. Though, his spirits carefully rose back again as he spoke more lightly. I feel pretty good about getting older. Not being a kid anymore, because I'm doing it with you. Before we could only pretend to play adult, and I was bad at it. Liz was right on that one, unfortunately. And now we're at our wedding. I know what it's like to be an adult, kind of. You just do it and keep going. I guess it's as simple as that. I wish I could have figured that out from the beginning. No, actually, I'm glad everything went the way it did. I am too. The song that blanketed your discussion was at its final chorus as guests were saying their goodbyes to one another. It was almost time to go. Too soon you would know that what the ending note of your wedding was, the final glance, the last word. Those thoughts swirled in your mind until Cove brought you back to existing in the present where you belong.
It's nice.
I think our life is really nice. Beginnings and always. Not letting either of you get lost in contemplation again, Cove suddenly clapped both his hands against your shoulders with the utmost seriousness. You know, if you ever want to have another party like this, I'll do it. It can be every year, multiple times a year, whenever you feel like it. Don't say those kind of things to me, Cove, because you know I'd take you up on it. Also, we need to... surrogacy and adoption is expensive. Expensive. So, maybe not for a while. We'll keep Baxter in business forever. I love you, Cove, so much. Thank you for everything. I hope you understand how much you mean to me. You bet we'll have another. If it's up, it's with you. I'm up for anything. You'll bet we'll have another after kids. It's a deal. Tiny, delicate water drops pooled in the corner of his eyes. Cove let his hands travel from shoulders up to touch your face. He cradled you tenderly, never wanted to let go. What did I do to get to be with someone who's there for me? Someone who honestly cares about me? Well, I don't need an answer, really. I'm just grateful.
I love you.
I love you too, Hark. Always. Aww. That was sweet. And I mean, wow. Like, the only critique... Okay. Let me start with that. The only critique I have, really major critique I have, is that they should have at least... The ending was way too abrupt. At least give us some sort of, like, final screen. Some sort of final, like, just married screen that you would, like, click to end and come back to the... come back to the main menu, because that was just so like it just completely spoiled the mood. It just completely took you out of the mood. Like, they didn't. The DLC is amazing. It was so good. It was massive. Like, that was a really long DLC. That was a lot of content, and just the sheer amount of customization that you could put. As somebody who has gone through the process of wedding planning myself, that was relatively thorough. That was pretty darn thorough. At least it did all of the fun bits, the really fun bits. I would have loved to have done other fun things like, decide who sits at what tables and that, but that was all like unnecessary. Like that's just, at that point it just becomes like a more of a wedding planning simulation, which is actually a huge part of what this was. So yeah, I definitely have to hand it to the developers over this again. This clearly shows how much of a passion project this is. They clearly care about this game. They clearly tried to make this as special, as customizable, as true to the way that people want to play this game and plan to play their life through this as much as possible. And I love it. I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it. It's just because it was so grand and was so well done, that ending just completely was like, really, guys? Like, really? You had set everything up so much just to have it end like that? That was a little disappointing. Did it completely ruin the whole experience? Absolutely not. It didn't ruin it. It was just like, oh, so close. So close. But at the very end, that was what you sort of like dropped the ball on. I hope they do fix that in a patch, because it's a simple thing. It's a really simple thing. When somebody clicks or have it just go to a final screen that does not immediately, it should just not immediately take you to this. It should just let the person decide, all right, I was able to like relish in this moment. I'm ready to click and come back here. That just kind of was really frustrating because everything else was so well done. Everything else. But no, like, again, mad kudos. I have to hand it to these people. This was probably the most thorough, like, life simulator in terms of a visual novel that I have ever played. Like, this is right up there as one of my favorite visual novels games of all time. Right up there with the Seduce Me series. Right up there with even coming out on top, the very first, I think that was the very first visual novel that I played. It's up there. But this one, and actually Arcade Spirits is pretty darn up there as well. It's pretty high. So this was great job on this DLC. They're still coming out with other DLCs to romance not only Derek but also Baxter, which is really interesting. I don't really have any interest in romancing Baxter, although I literally loved how much of an MVP he was in this DLC. It was really cool to bring him back because I never really did get super attached to Baxter. I didn't dislike him, but I wasn't particularly like motivated to hang out with him, but I was cool to hang out with him too. And so I was really glad I was able to like establish a rapport with him. It would be really interesting if they came up with a surprise DLC, raising kids, but I think that at that point it would just be way too much. And they have other projects, like they have a sequel to this game. So, plus I really am raring to go for the Derek DLC, and I'm just curious if the Derek DLC will be even remotely as like complete and involved as the Cove one. I'm not holding my breath because I figured when they first made this game, it really was meant to be about Cove, and then the other characters were just like, we'll add these on as like a stretch goal for ourselves. I don't know how they did this Kickstarter, but like even if that wasn't really a stretch goal, they probably thought the primary character we're focusing on is Cove, but we also these two other characters that you can romance. We'll definitely put time with them. I seriously doubt, but I would be pleasantly surprised if the Derek one was just as thorough as this one. It probably wouldn't, just because I don't think you would end up meeting Derek from the very beginning like you do with Cove. I feel like the beginning would still be the same. You would meet Cove, and then you eventually meet Derek, and then you can start like having a more of a relationship with him than you did with this game. And then Baxter too. Like Baxter, you don't meet until much later, until you're much older. So I doubt that the Baxter one was be nearly as involved, but it's okay. As I said, I love Cove. This is not a knock on any of you Cove fans, but I do genuinely believe that Derek, if it were up to me, Derek is more my type. Derek is definitely more compatible with me, because Cove is sweet, but I kind of prefer somebody that's a little bit more outgoing, that's a little bit less that's a little bit less introverted than Cove. Absolutely sweet guy, but I felt guilty because I just felt that my extrovertness just was too much for him and pushed him out of his comfort zone too much. I'm like, I don't think I'm the perfect person for Cove, personality wise, for me, but I think I would mesh really well with Derek. So we'll see how it goes. I did definitely appreciate going through this game, Romancing Cove. It was a really cool experience, unlike any I've ever played in any other visual novel. I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you all enjoyed this game just as much as I did. So let me know in the comments below how satisfied you were with the Cove romance. I think going through it, like, it's about as satisfying as it possibly could be, because you could even decide, if you're not even romance him, you could even decide to be platonic with him. How many of you in the comments prefer Derek or Baxter? How many people in the comments prefer Derek or Baxter? I'm really curious about that. But yeah, thank you for joining me on this very long, not only DLC, but LP in general. I'm pretty sure I will see you all again with this game, with a Derek DLC at minimum. And if they make a Derek wedding DLC, I mean, that'd be amazing. I'm wondering if they do the same thing with Baxter. Baxter obviously could not be the wedding planner, but I'm guessing what would happen is Baxter would take the lead in planning the wedding on your own. Because you could also just plan your own wedding. It might not be like the easiest thing in the world, but you could do it. You could plan your own wedding. I know people who have. So anyway, thank you all for watching, and until next time, love yourselves and love Cove. Bye.